embrace your mistakes.
So I guess that was my favorite mistake.
My favorite mistake. Oh, this is a good one, Mark.
So you want me to tell you about my favorite mistake that I've made on the show?
So yeah, those are my favorite, if you can say favorite, mistakes that I've done.
Hi, I'm Mark Graban. Welcome to a very, very special episode of My Favorite Mistake. Today we'll hear from 5 personalities from my favorite podcast, the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz. They recently left the Disney ESPN corporate family. Was this a mistake? Well, no. They recently signed a $50 million 3-year sponsorship deal to stay independent. So congratulations to all of them. I connected with Greg, Amin, Chris, Roy, and Billy via Cameo. I asked Stugotz. He never got back to me, but at least I tried. As a thank you to my guests, beyond what I paid to Cameo, I made a donation to an important cause they support, the Ron McGill Conservation Endowment. Ron McGill is a zoologist from Zoo Miami. He's a frequent weekly guest on the Le Batard Show. So I hope you will consider doing the same. You can find a link for how you can learn more about the foundation and better yet, to make a donation by going to markgraban.com/LAF for Le Batard and Friends. If you listen to the show, if you get the show, you'll enjoy this episode. If you don't get the show, I hope you'll enjoy the stories anyway. Unlike Dan, I won't stop along the way to explain the show references. But anyway, here we go.
Hey, my favorite mistake. What an odd phrase. It's an oxymoron. Why would I consider a mistake to be something cherished and favorited? But I guess every time I miss a hard net workout on the Le Batard Show, it might qualify as a favorite mistake because it's sort of fun. You know, it happens. People seem to like it, whatever. I've actually, in my journalism career at the Miami Herald, you tend to, over time, you're going to make mistakes. And I remember back in the, this would have been the late 70s. I was covering the Fort Lauderdale Strikers soccer team, and I did a story. It was like during the Argentina-Falkland Islands British War, whenever that was, and I was interviewing one of the Strikers players, a defender named Ken Fogarty, and he was telling me a great, human interest story about how his sister was in the British Navy, headed to the Falkland Islands to fight this war. And so I write that story, and it's sort of, it's whatever. It's it's not a funny story. It's sort of like I thought it was a pretty neat story. And it turns out he made the whole thing up because Ken Fogarty was like a court jester, just making shit up. So the next day, the Miami News, the competing paper, wrote a story about how I'd been duped, and it was sort of embarrassing at the time, but it sort of taught me a lesson, and that's why it's sort of my favorite mistake. It taught me a lesson that you can take nothing at face value. Like if you're interviewing somebody who tells you their name is Tom Smith, I ask, is that TOMSMITH? Because, hey, I used to know a guy named Tom with an H, THOM. So you can never take anything for granted. You always double check everything. So I guess that was my favorite mistake. See ya. Bye-bye.
My favorite mistake. Oh, this is a good one, Mark. Good question. Okay, this one's kind of recent. So, I'm, this is when I'm at ESPN. They tell me, hey, there's this guy who's writing a story about the Dan Le Batard Show. Can you talk to him? And I said, sure. He put me in contact with the guy. He says, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. I'm a big fan of the show. What's your schedule availability? I said, hey, I'm available pretty much any time after this time. I said, cool, I'll do it during my lunch break. So I'm like, all right, cool. So then he calls me and we have like a great conversation. I'm thinking like this guy's some college kid or whatever. Probably working another job and he's just trying to get his information together. So I call the guy. We talk for about an hour. It's a great conversation, and I'm kind of getting him little tips and hints and stuff. Cause I'm thinking, oh, young kid getting into journalism. I'm gonna help him out. So everything went cool. I don't think I was condescending, but I definitely was a level of kind of paternalistic kind of or uncle advice or whatever. So fast forward like a month later or whatever, I'm with Pablo Torre. Pablo says to me, "Hey man, did you talk to Mike Schur?" I said, "Who the hell is Mike Schur?" So Mike Schur, the guy who invented Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine and was a producer on The Office. And I said, "Wow, no, I didn't talk. Why would he talk to me?" Says he's writing something about Le Batard Show. And I said, "Oh dear Jesus." I talked to the guy like he was a child, like he was like 22 and straight out of college. Dude's one of the most successful producers in the history of American television. Really, really, really embarrassing. I guess the mistake I made was thinking I'm hot shit. And, and the learning experience is like, if you don't know who you're talking to, do not pretend to be hot shit. Hope that works for you.
What's up, Mark? Hey, so you want me to tell you about my favorite mistake that I've made on the show? That's interesting. I've given this some thought. And I think my favorite mistake is when it's probably one of my earliest mistakes. It was when I would still get really scared before talking on air, and it was during Funniest Thing from the Sports Weekend. We've replayed this sound before. We've also, believe it's a rejoin back when we did rejoins. It was Tyron Smith, okay, so the situation was we were going around the room and saying Funniest Thing from the Sports Weekend, and my funniest thing was the Cowboys that week had played on NBC Sunday Night Football, and there was just a graphic of Tyron Smith at one point, the left tackle for the Cowboys, and it was just the graphic of like showing how large he was, and he had a football in his hands, kind of the way I'm holding, like he was, and the way his hands squashed it, the football looked so small in his hands, and it was just an amazingly funny picture because of how large his hands were. And the way I just said that to you is what I was kind of trying to go for on air. But I was new to speaking on air. This was back in the day when I would only kind of speak during Funniest Thing from the Sports Weekend. So like the whole day before the show, I would be thinking, okay, we got Funniest Thing today. I got to talk on air, and that's a big deal, and I'm nervous about it. What am I going to do? Let me pick something that's really quick to say, because I would generally avoid, even if I thought something was funnier, that was a really long, detailed sentence, I would be like, nope, too much pressure, I'm just going to go. I would always look for the simplest, funniest thing to say, and I thought, Tyrod Smith, he was holding a ball, and it looked, and so basically what happened was I started talking, and someone said something to me right before air, so I got rattled, and I like lost my train of thought, so I ended up calling him Tyrod Smith, Tyrod Taylor, and I just fumbled on his name 3 or 4 times, and then I was just like lost all confidence, and I was like, the ball in his hand, it looks so small, and it's a really funny clip to hear back. It makes me cringe. It makes me realize how far I've come, as far as just like I don't generally get scared now when I am going to talk on air. Sometimes I lose my train of thought, because I'll be like wanting to say something, and then I'll hear someone say something, and then Dan will go to me, and I'm like, oh wait, what was I going to say just before that? So that still happens sometimes, but it's never of fear. But that's a funny thing to think about, how far and how long ago that was and how embarrassing that was. But like our show, it was an embarrassing thing, but we ended up turning it into a win, and we've replayed it a bunch. It was a rejoin, so look at me. Even when I'm bad, I'm good. That's the beauty of the show. But I hope that's what you wanted. That's a little wordy, I know. I hope your podcast, you can tighten me up a little bit, make me sound better than I actually am. But Mark, I appreciate the support. I feel like you've already, it is a better cause to do $100 to Ron than to this, but I was going to say you don't have to do that. This is enough, but if you'd like to donate to Ron, that would be nice too. Maybe I'll make a little donation to Ron, because now you made me feel bad. I'm just kidding. It's a great cause. He's got a huge endowment, baby. Anyways, Mark, appreciate the support. Have a good day.
Okay, Mark, my favorite mistake that I've done over the course of my career is I used to be the Marlins producer for their games. So I had ordered food because I was hungry, and in the middle of an inning, I had gone outside and I had picked up the food. And then when I got back, apparently the third out was made. So about 30 seconds had passed by before I went to break for commercial. So luckily, the announcers did not make a sound because, quite frankly, they didn't know that they went to break. So, another time, again, a food situation. Again, well, this one was for the heat. I was the heat producer, and I had gotten locked out of the studio. Luckily, the cleaners were there to help clean up the studio. So I knocked on the door, and after about, I would say, 35 seconds, the door opened. I was able to get back into the studio. I got lucky there. So yeah, those are my favorite, if you can say favorite, mistakes that I've done or that have happened over the course of my career.
Hey Mark, it's Billy. Hey my favorite mistake listeners, it's Billy. How are you? I've come up with 3 mistakes that I've made to share with you today that I guess turned into a learning opportunity for me. Here's a mistake, not included in the 3, bonus mistake. I don't know if you get a bonus before you get the actual like meat and potatoes, as they say. Here's a bonus mistake. I keep coming outside to do these videos at the same time-ish, more or less, thinking, how many neighbors could possibly be left to cut their grass? I have to assume that you can hear what's going on. I think it's a leaf blower. I think it's getting closer. It's like every day I'm out here recording these things, and every day there's still grass being cut. I don't understand how many lawns there are in this area that need to be cut, but is that a mistake? That doesn't count. Because you could argue I haven't learned from that mistake because I keep making the mistake over and over again. So that one probably doesn't count. Here's a mistake. Bald eagles. I didn't know, and this shouldn't surprise you. I didn't even realize the mistake that I had made until like something else is going by. I didn't even realize the mistake I had made until like a year or 2 later, listening to it as a rejoin. The question was, what was the question? I feel like the question was to describe America in one word, right? I think that's what it was. And then I think Chris said freedom, and I said bald eagles. I didn't hear the one word portion of that question. I just thought describe America in a phrase. I think that was the question. Describe whatever it was. It was describe something patriotic in a phrase. And I thought bald eagles. And it was supposed to be one word. I also didn't remember that Amin was there, but listening to the rejoin, I hear Amin every time. And I'm like, okay, Amin was there for what was, a horrible mistake that I made that's ended up working out because they've made bald eagle t-shirts. The bald eagle t-shirt led to the bald eagle costume at Tim Legler's house on Halloween. The bald eagle costume at Tim Legler's house on Halloween led to the bald eagle appearance on Radio Row in Atlanta. So that one mistake led to t-shirts, rejoins, a Halloween costume, a Super Bowl appearance. So that was one thing that ended up working out. Here's another mistake. DDP. DDP was on one day that I was filling in, and he got very angry at Dan and just started cursing up a storm. And my mistake was I should have probably hung up on him after the first curse. And luckily Roy was there and he caught the other curses, and that all worked out smoothly. But to tie those 2 mistakes together, because of Bald Eagle and because of DDP, we had a collision course of mistakes at the Atlanta Super Bowl Radio Row where DDP was there promoting DDP yoga, or I don't remember what it was, and we were trying to book him on the show, and he remembered the Dan situation and did not come on the show, but said to send Dan his love or best wishes or whatever it was. And then later on, when I was dressed as a bald eagle, was able to get DDP on the show and make a prediction for the game because he was more open to talking to a bald eagle than he was to join the show normally. Another mistake, the onion. The onion and eating the onion also seems to be a thing people love, and that has lasted a while, and that sound still haunts me, and the taste still haunts me. And my mistake was eating the onion, because I've since learned that, as you can hear, people are cutting the grass. I've since learned that apparently you just don't need to pay off any of your grid of death punishments, and there's no real consequences. So if I wouldn't have eaten that onion, I wouldn't have ended up in the hospital that day, because I ended up vomiting so much that I became dehydrated, and I had kidney stones apparently at the time, and forced out one of the kidney stones, and they had to admit me. It was one of the worst. I suffer from kidney stones regularly, actually, and if you must know, this morning I actually had a kidney stone, and I still have my urgent care bracelet on. But anyway, that was the worst incident of kidney stones I ever had, and it's because I was so dehydrated from all the vomiting that I was admitted to the hospital. I was there for 2 days. It ended up costing me, after insurance and everything, like $1,500 or something, all because of that stupid onion that I had to eat for the bucket of death. And because I didn't want problems, I didn't try to like expense it with the company or anything. So yeah, my mistake there was actually honoring the grid of death and participating in that. Anyways, my favorite mistake, listeners, Mark. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, the grid of death, what happens to those fines? Because those fines were a reward from the bucket of death, and the fines have continued, but we haven't been doing it anymore. Anyways, my favorite mistake, listeners, Mark, embrace your mistakes.